My grandfather was a captain on the fire department. He brought his sons onto the fire department, a couple of my uncles, my father. So my family has his generational history with the Chicago Fire Department. They know protocol, they know procedure, they know emergency response for any and all situations. My grandfather joined the fire department in his 20s, and once he elevated himself to lieutenant and captain, he brought my father and my uncle into the department. My uncle, Captain James Winbush, has been with the fire department most of his adult life. My father was with the Chicago Fire Department. Uncles, they have a history with the Chicago Fire Department. I called my uncle Jim to discuss the response of a fireman and the fire department and the captain when they get a call for what happened at the Peterson Museum the night Biggie was killed, to get his assessment as a captain.
You get an emergency call. It's with an ambulance. It was a non-fire situation. As soon as you get to the scene, you make an assessment of what you have. So you look and see, I need the police, I need another ambulance, and I need maybe another engine company for manpower. So that's basically called size up. You're in charge of the scene. In any emergency at all, be it small or the whole city, it's the fire chief that is in charge of everything, because the fire department is totally self-sufficient to do what it needs to do. So on a smaller level, when you arrive on the scene as the IE incident commander, you immediately take charge of the situation. Doesn't matter what it is. If you've got crowd control, you call for the police. If there's private security, you try to get them involved in that process. If they're employed by the establishment, you immediately take control of the area. You triage the patient as to what you need to do, and you get and the paramedics take over that side of patient care. You are in charge of transporting the patient from inside the structure into the ambulance and assisting the paramedics as your primary responsibility, and removing any other hazards that may be within the area that is your responsibility. So you're flat out in charge right away. The police report to you until some ranking police officer gets on the scene, and they take over that responsibility, freeing you up to focus on what you need to do to assist the paramedics to save the life of the individual involved. That's essentially, basically what you have to do.
So something that starts off as it's a party going on, there's too many people, they call the fire department to get the people out of there because it's a hazard?
Every building, every structure, every event place has a placard on the wall that says X number of people can be in this space. And at the point that you move beyond SRO, standing room only, you are now jeopardizing that code of the city, what I'll call the occupancy code. Okay? So at that point, and we've had that in Chicago where people were trampled to death because it exceeded the occupancy code, and emergency came about and they stampeded out of the building. So yes, that's basically a fire prevention, hazard prevention, city ordinance, building code violation.
So let's say you're there evacuating and security for a celebrity comes up to you and says, we've had gang-related threats on these people. Can you help us get them evacuated safely? What would you do?
You notify the police.
And how long would it take the police to respond to your call?
almost instantly, because it's coming directly from the fire department through communication to the police. And they know that's a real response. So you call for what's called a 10-1, which is policeman in trouble. And they respond immediately to that.
Okay. So there should have been no reason for this person to know there was a threat on this man's life and him not alert the fire department who was already in the building.
The assessment of the threat on the individual's life, if they notified the authorities would have responded immediately.
Right. And he didn't, but he's blaming other people for it happening. And I'm saying the paramedics were right there. I mean, the fire department was right there. Who responds? Does the battalion chief, the captain and lieutenant, are they present in a crowd-sized situation?
Oh, yeah, you get a battalion chief, absolutely.
And a captain and a lieutenant are present.
Well, a captain and a lieutenant are in charge of the apparatus, an engine company or a truck. And the chief is the overall in charge of the units.
Okay.
So nobody drags their feet on that. None of that is taken casually. All of that's taken extremely seriously.
Okay, so that's what I wanted. How long were you on the fire department and a captain?
I was on the fire department for 32 and a half years, and I was a company officer for over 20 years. The responsibility for lieutenant and captain is pretty much the same.
And your father was also a captain?
Yes, my father was a captain. My brother Stephen, my brother Thaddeus, and myself were firefighters initially. I rose to the rank of captain. They remained firefighters.
And Dad is my grandfather, your father, was also a fire inspector, was he?
Oh, yes. He was a supervisor of Fire Prevention Bureau for the downtown Chicago. It's called the Chicago Loop.
Okay. So you have extensive knowledge of protocol as a fireman, and our family certainly has a history with the fire department, so we know emergency situations and how to respond.
My brother Stephen and I grew up basically in a firehouse. We were in the firehouse at least a couple of times a week, so we kind of grew up in that, in the whole job itself, and we both came on in our early 20s. So yes, we had extensive time frame that we had a lot of experience in firefighting.
Okay, that was all I wanted to ask you. Wouldn't the 911 operator in 1997 stay on the phone with you until the ambulance came?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and they would have been giving you instructions on how to help that person until the ambulance arrived, right?
They would have been getting as much information as possible in order to be the eyes and ears of the responding fire companies and police companies.
So I don't believe anyone called 911 because no one was on the phone.
Well, generally they don't. Somebody happens to call, and they'll call and hang up. They'll say, send the police, or and sometimes they don't hardly say anything, and you have to trace the call to see where the 911 call came from, and then send the police to investigate.
Oh.